Well, I'm here with Jordan Turner, and we're talking today. It's May 17th, 2023. We're talking today about proper property management. That's a mouthful, eh, Jordan?
That is, yes.
Anyway, proper property management. And I'm going to tell you, I'll start off with this. It's an easy business to get into. You know, if you have $1,500 or $2,000, you can definitely set yourself up as a property manager. It's just very simple to do. And it's not hard to get clients either. So those are two pieces of good news, right? I mean, in terms of getting into the business, you need a few signs, you need a business card, you need a business registration, you need a website, and if you can't afford a website, a Facebook page is fine, and you know, maybe a few flyers, and you're ready to go. There's really not a whole lot that money you have to spend. And as you know, Jordan, business registration in Ontario is like $70.
Yeah, it's not much at
Right?
all.
So it's not very much. You don't have to incorporate, which could be $1,000. You can just have a business registration, and there you go. You can open a bank account, you know, with Jordan Turner Property Management, or you know, Seaway Management, or Belleville Management, or Hastings County Property Management, or whatever, Bay of Quinte. I mean, who knows what it could be? But whatever name you have, you can get into business fairly quickly. And in terms of finding clients, it's both a good news and a bad news story. The good news is it's relatively easy to do that. The bad news, it comes because most landlords hate their property managers, right? So if you
Yeah.
called up, you know, if you called up 100 property owners and you said, look, my name's Jordan Turner, I'm running a property management company by this name, you know, you probably will get a relatively good hearing, you know, because most landlords are not happy with their property managers.
What do you think they're most disappointed about in terms of the property managers that they have?
Well, that's a great question. And I was about to address this, but I'm glad it's a conversation, not just me talking for an hour. So what happens is property managers, generally speaking, will say to the property owner, they'll say, look, what are you paying now for property management? And the property owner will say, well, I'm paying 6% uh, of my rental income to my property manager, or 5.5%. And so the first words that come out of the would-be property manager's mouth is, oh, I'll do it for 5%. And if somebody's doing it for 5%, well, the next words out of the would-be property manager is, I'll do it for 4.5%. And as a result, the property managers do not make enough money. They just don't. And every time the phone rings, or they get an email, or they get a text from a tenant, they go, oh, damn it, another friggin' problem. Because when you're in the property management business, you're in the people management business. And, you know, in my opinion, the tenants are your friends, not your enemies. But to most property managers, because they're not making enough money, every time there's a call, there's an additional stress and pressure on them to perform a service of some sort, solve a problem of some sort, and they just don't have enough hours in the day. So the way to be successful in property management is not to engage in a run to the bottom and a race to the bottom. You know, I mean, once you get down to 4% or 3.5% or 4.5% of revenues, if you're renting an apartment for, you know, $2,000 and you're taking in 4%, that's $80 a month to manage that apartment. A couple of phone calls, one or two visits, you know, some kind of a change of the lease, or any number of issues that come up. That $80 turns into a cost to you, whether it's your time or somebody else that's working for you, of $120. You lose $40 every month.
Your time becomes worthless at that point, right?
Well, yeah, you're probably making less than minimum wage. And so what happens in the property management business is their clients, and they have clients on both sides of the operation, right? They have tenants that are really their clients, and then they have their property owners. And so it's a race to the bottom, and you just don't make enough money, and you don't have enough time to do a proper job. And so it's very important when you're getting new clients that you explain why you're going to charge 6 or 7 or 8%, and that there are other things that you're going to charge them as well. And they're going to say, "Oh, well, I can get Bill over here to do it for 5%. Why should I pay you 6 or 7 or even 8% of my revenues?" You've got to be able to explain why.
You're establishing your value at the very beginning, right?
You have to, because you don't want clients who landlord clients or property owner clients who are very difficult and cheap. And so that's one thing. You have to be able to explain your value proposition. We're going to talk a lot more about that. And then the next thing is you have to view your tenants as your customers, right? They're your customers. They pay your wages and they pay the landlord or the property owner's mortgages. And so you have to, in your own self, you have to view them as your allies, as your customers, as your clients, not as the enemy. That's incredibly important. And if you think about property management on the residential side and the commercial side, it's exactly the same. If a tenant moves out once a year, let's say you had, like one of my clients, Dore Property Management, has about 600 doors that he manages, his company manages, and it's quite profitable. And his people are taught and trained to view the clients as their clients. I mean, the tenants as their clients. And then what I taught Dan to do and his people to do was don't do any 1-year leases if you can avoid it. Do 2-year leases. Because if you have 600 doors and you lose one tenant, every tenant every year, that's 600 new leases you've got to do every year. That's a hell of a lot of work to do 600. You have to interview all the tenants and check their references and check their credit score and, all the other stuff you have to do. And that's a lot. So what you want to try and do on the residential side is sign 2-year leases if you can, so that you reduce the number of leases that you have to do from 600 a year, in Dan's case, to 300. And if you could keep them there for 5 years, or let's make it easy, 6 years, you only have to do 100 leases a year rather than 600.
And from your experience, how reluctant are tenants to sign anything longer than a 1-year lease?
Right. Well, I'll tell you right now that the tech workers I've dealt with will not sign 2-year leases because they change jobs like I changed my shirt. So that one day they're working for Shopify in Ottawa, the next day they're working for Facebook in California, and they definitely won't sign 2-year leases. It is what it is. But there are plenty of military personnel on assignment for 2 years. There's plenty of government workers. There are plenty of contractors and construction types and many others who rent. And they're happy to sign 2-year leases.
Okay.
So, I mean, it just, everything's a negotiation. That's the first thing you have to learn to be an entrepreneur is there are no rules, right? You kind of make them up.
You create them, yeah. And then listen.
So you if you think about it as well, in commercial, you want to try and have a minimum lease term of 3 years, if not 5 years. And certainly for, like the stores that I've been renting to for many years, I do a 10-year lease, right? Because again, if you think about the cost to the property owner and the time that for a property manager, if you have to replace all of your tenants every year, not only do you have to do all the leases, you're probably going to have some significant vacancies. Mm-hmm. Right. So if poor Dan had to replace all 600 residential tenants every year, his property owners would be pretty unhappy because, Mary moves out and Jennifer's moving in, but you have to make the apartment ready. So there might be a 2-week period where you have no rent. It might even be a month. Can you imagine losing a month revenue each year?
Every door, yeah, no.
So they'll, your property owners will fire you in no time.
Yeah.
So whether it's commercial or residential, try for minimum 2-year leases, and commercial maybe 3 to 5 years and possibly even 10 years. All right. It reduces the amount of work and reduces that vacancy rate that you just can't get rid of, because tenant turnover you will always have, almost always. I mean, every once in a while you get lucky and a tenant moves out on July 31st and the apartment is not too bad. You can get somebody in on August 1st, but that doesn't happen very often.
There's turnover in all aspects of life, right? I mean, it's like employee turnover, anything like that. You
I,
can't
I,
control.
I completely
It's all
agree.
about managing
Back in the day, I used to coach a few Canadian Tire franchisees. And if you think about Costco, Costco pays a living wage. They have medical benefits for their staff. They have a promotion hierarchy, so you can actually have a career at Costco. And about 70% of Costco employees are very happy. And surveys after survey, about 70%, which is terrific in the retail business. But if you look at Canadian Tire, they don't like the wage creep. I've talked to many of them. They say, well, I hired Jordan, back in the day for $3.85 an hour. And then a year and a half later, because of wage creep, he was making almost $5. I gotta get rid of that guy. And so if you went into a Canadian Tire store back in the day and you meet somebody, he or she almost certainly is a brand new employee and they don't know anything. I remember going into a Canadian Tire with my oldest son, Andrew, and rollerblades had just come out. And I was in Canadian Tire and I wanted to buy some rollerblades for my kid. And there was a big tall guy standing right in front of me at Canadian Tire. And I said, do you have any rollerblades here? And he looked at me. He went, what? I said, well, they're like kind of, it was new. It's kind of like roller skates, but instead of having four wheels, they only have, two inline sets of wheels. He goes to me, no, we don't have anything like that. I said, oh, okay, well, thanks anyway. And then he moves out of the way. And in behind him, from the floor to the ceiling, as far as you could see on either side of him, rollerblades. Right behind him, I burst out laughing. And so when you set up a property management company, and you have some staff, Dan Dore spends a tremendous amount of time and money on staff training and staff retention.
I believe he was a part of one of your Wednesday meetups way back, right?
He was.
I was actually thinking about that when I first reached out to you.
So I'm going to tell you some really, really, really easy ways to get some clients, okay? Hang on, I'm going to sit down for a minute. I have a stand-up desk, but I'm getting older, so every once in a while I have to sit down.
Convenient.
So Dan has taught me this. I wish I could claim it as my own, but I cannot. The property management business is fairly easy to get into, as I mentioned earlier, and not very expensive. And Dan Dore's way of getting property owners as clients is really, really smart and simple. In front of every building he owns, and in front of buildings that he doesn't own but has permission, he'll put up a sign saying, Dore Property Management, text this number or email. And it's very important these days not just to have a cell phone number on a sign, because a lot of people today are shy. They're just used to, email and texting. People dump their girlfriends or their boyfriends over text, right? You don't even have to, back in my day, if I was going to get dumped by a girl or I was going to dump a girl, you actually had to go and tell her we're not going to see each other anymore, which takes a little bit of courage. But texting them, hey, listen, I don't like you anymore, goodbye. And that's just the way it is. I mean, it's 2023, not 1985. And so you have Dore Property Management, text this number or emails. It's very important because people will text you or email you. And it is oriented towards tenants. If you're looking for an apartment, you can text this number or you can email. Excuse me. But the interesting thing about that is lots of these property owners are driving by and, they see the sign, they go, I'm gosh darn mad at my property manager. I've had yet more problems in the building. We got mold in the building. He didn't pay any attention to the fact that we had a little leak in the spring, and by the fall, we got mold in our whole building. It's a $100,000 problem, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what would have been a $5,000 fix of the roof in April or May is now a $150,000 mold remediation problem with vacancies, because you can't have people in a building with mold because they can get sick and some can die. So landlords or property owners are driving by and they see, oh, look, Jordan Turner Property Management or Dore Property Management, whatever it might say on the sign. I'm going to call that guy. So a lot of the calls that they get, calls or texts or emails, are from property owners who are not happy
with their current property manager.
Yeah, and they'll call you. Listen, I'm not here. I'm not interested in renting an apartment, but I'd like to speak to Mr. Turner if possible. And because I got 7 buildings and I'm not happy with my guy. Okay.
That's all a result, as we discussed in the beginning, of not valuing yourself enough, right? Just trying to be as competitive as possible and lowering your rates, and all of a sudden you're not paying as much attention.
Well, I mean, most property managers are like realtors. They don't last 2 years. Yeah. They're out of the business in under 2 years. That's just, I don't know if that's true. I just made that up, but I suspect it is true. I mean, I've had clients go into the property management business, coaching clients of mine, and I check in on them a year and a half later. Oh, no, I don't do that anymore.
Probably because poor outdated business models, right? I mean,
100%, Jordan.
Investment situations the way they would have been addressed 10, 15 years ago. But I mean, everything.
Right. Well, we're going to talk a lot about the business model in a second, but I know you a little bit. And when you told me that you were thinking about starting a property management business, I really like the idea because you have the personality for it. You're a strict, no nonsense, get it done kind of person, but also you're a quality individual and you'll stand up for yourself in a nice way. You're not going to punch somebody out, but you'll stand up for yourself and you'll explain your value proposition. Yeah, now, a couple of other keys to success, okay, is and you were right on the right track there a moment ago, is define what your business model looks like. And that business model should also talk to a tight geography. Like one of the things that Dan Dore does is he has a very tight geography. Like his geography is, I think he's got 600 doors, mostly in the east end of Ottawa. So Orleans and parts of Ottawa is kind of east of Bank Street. East of Bank Street in Ottawa is very French, and he speaks English and French. Most of his staff speak English and French. And so if you have 600 doors and they're all within a few minutes of each other, it's a lot easier to manage than if you had 600 doors, some in Ottawa, some in Belleville, some in Toronto, some in Tallahassee, Florida. I mean, that would be very difficult to manage.
Absolutely.
So number one, he defined his geography. And number two, he steers away from low rent buildings with a lot of what do they call it, where you haven't kept the building up to date. The building is literally falling apart. And there's a proper term for it. I'm tired today, so I forgot the term. But anyway, he wants buildings that are in good shape, that are well located, that aren't slums.
That's all amenities for they're gonna call to higher class tenants, right?
100%.
So that's because you're in, like you said, people management, you want to make sure that you're looking at properties that are going to bring on like high quality professionals.
Right. 100%.
But the building requires less upkeep too.
Right. So Dan will take on some buildings, for example, when one of his current property owners will often come to him and say, Dan, we're going to buy this building over here, and it is a friggin' mess, but we're going to remove all the tenants from it, and we're going to renovate it, and we've got a good architect and a good team of constructors, and we'd like you to property manage it. He'll do that. What he won't do is he won't have a slum landlords call him all the time, say, I'm not happy with my property manager, and I got what it's like. I got people who are selling crack in my house, so I need you to manage it. Dan says, no thanks.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
I mean, you go in there, you take your life in your hands. I mean, you're trying to collect the rent, and they'll say, yeah, listen, you come back and
when you're learning your value as an individual at that point as well, right? I mean, everything you do in life, it's all about how you value yourself.
Right, 100%. And so Dan is very protective of his brand. He's very choosy about his clients, And he has a specific model in mind. So if you're going to go into the property management business, I think you're going to want to do some residential and commercial, especially if you're focused in Hastings County. All right. I mean, it's just not big enough. It's not Toronto, where you might just say, I'm going to manage condos.
Yeah, and I mean, you need a special license to manage condominiums.
Oh yeah, no, you definitely do. But I mean, you can get it, right?
Yeah, it takes like a few months. I've been looking.
Yeah, you can get it. I mean, you're a young, smart person. You can get any license you want. You just have to apply yourself, which you would do. But I'm not saying you should do condos. I wouldn't do it. But some people in Toronto will say, I'm just going to be a condo manager and I'll have a number of condos to manage and I'll make it a profitable business. It is a tight geography. I know condo management, I know condo boards. That's fine. That's a perfectly reasonable model. But in a smaller town like Belleville or Hastings County or even Prince Edward County, you probably will end up doing residential and commercial. You probably will.
Yeah, like mixed use, multi-family.
Yeah, I mean, like our building. And one of the things that if you were going to launch this business, one of the things you would do is, for example, whether you're managing my building or not, if you had a nice sign, I'd let you put a sign up down there saying, property Jordan Turner Property Management, text this number, email this, put it in the window for now, and just leave it there for a while.
Marketing and making an imprint, right? No one's going to know you exist unless you're
no. And Dan taught me this. Signage for this business works great. So what I would ask you to do, if you have a pen there, is I'd ask you to think about your friends who have houses, or your dad's friends who own houses, some of the other people who have commercial buildings. And what I would recommend you do is the signs that Dan puts up are quite big. They're like, I don't know, 6 feet by 4 feet or 8 feet by 4 feet. They're big, and they're very nice. But for a business starting up, I love lawn signs. You know what a lawn sign is, right? Yeah.
So,
and
signs.
I beg your pardon?
All the signs used for the elections and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. And they're cheap. You can get a very nice 2-sided lawn sign for like $15.
Oh
right?
Yeah, I use Canva quite a bit for signage, pamphlets, stuff like that. So
yeah.
guess the print can probably supply them, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, there's lots of people can do it. So we're gonna just fool around for a minute, okay?
Yep.
So I'm going to change the color. All right, so we're going to have we're going to do a lawn sign together. All right,
sounds good.
Here's your lawn sign. Okay. No, I didn't do a very good job. The stuff that we're doing here, you can imagine how many times I've done this lecture. I mean, I've helped, I'm sure, over 2,000 different types of businesses start up, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so, that's the coaching thing I do. So hang on a second. See if maybe I've got you in here already. I don't think so. All right. And one of the nice things about one of the nice things about the property management business, if you ever, as a young person, decided to move to Vancouver, Los Angeles, Sydney, Australia, you can be in the property management business anywhere, right? I mean, it's, again, if you have $1,500, maybe 2,000 at the most, you can start this up, right? All right, So let's go. Jordan Turner. Oops, I guess I should spell your name right.
I spell it incorrectly all the time.
Really?
Oh, when I'm typing, I type too fast.
Oh yeah.
Try to type too fast anyway.
Lawn sign. 2023. Today's May 17th. All right. So here we have, do you have a name for this business yet?
I'm deciding between a couple. I liked your river, but I changed it to Riverside. Riverside Property Management. And there's
Oh, I love that.
I've really been toying with Belquin. Like Belquin's catchy, and it kind of covers Belleville, Quinney area.
I think Riverside is a better name though, because it pretty much every town in Canada and the United States is next to a
runs
river.
along a river. And then I wasn't sure, like Riverside Property Management, Riverside Management Group, any it depends on if I were ever to attempt to expand into project management as well.
Yeah, 100%.
But I think that's something that I'd consider at a later date, right?
Yeah, I love that idea. All right, so we got Riverside Property Management. I love that. Now, do you have a tagline? Did I come up with a tagline?
You did, I think, generating wealth or wealth generation. There were a couple. I was trying my hand at it, and I don't know, my brain wasn't working. Usually I'm pretty good at coming up with
Yeah.
short liners, but I wrote down your investment is our main concern. Time is limited, save yours. Rest easy, knowing we're awake.
Oh, I like that one. I'm going to use that one. Hang on. That's the best one. That's really good.
Yeah.
All right, I like that. All right, I'm going to save this. All right. Riverside Property Management, rest easy knowing we're awake. And I'm going to put in what's your cell number?
613-922-7206.
Sorry, I'm half asleep too. 613-922.
7206.
Okay. So what's the email you're going to use?
Do you think that it would be beneficial to create a custom role for the business?
Well, we'll come back to that. Yeah, I think it probably is. So I'm going to say email. Obviously, you'll do a much better job at this than I will.
But so far, so good.
All right. So what we've done here is, you notice I created a person, Emma.
Mhm.
People do not like emailing info@riversidepropertymanagement.com.
Tell me about it. I can't stand seeing an unpersonalized email
I
address.
cannot. So I just created for you a young woman. Her name is Emma. who will work for you for the rest of your life.
Perfect. As long
And
as
in
she's-
fact, of course, Emma at Riverside Property Management comes to you.
Yep.
So if you're answering, like, let's say I'm a property owner, I go, Emma, my name's Bruce Firestone. I own a few properties in the Belleville area. Would you, would you mind having somebody from your business give me a call or email me back? And then you write back and say, Bruce, Emma passed your message on to me, and I'm Jordan Turner. I'm the founder of the business. She'll work
So
for you.
I'm controlling both emails.
It has to be a female.
Okay.
Because women are more trusted than men. I mean, if you see a woman walking down the street in the middle of the night, most of the time you don't feel much of a threat. But if you
Most of the time.
I beg your pardon?
Most of the time.
Not all the time. No, I mean, women can be violent too. But for every 10 women that are in jail for some kind of violent crime, there's probably at least 100
Yeah,
men.
absolutely.
So it's just that generally speaking, women are not perceived as a threat, at least not to the degree that men are.
Mhm.
I mean, there have been female murderers, but usually, they do stupid stuff like poison people, right?
Oh yeah, I was just making a joke about some of the women that I see here downtown.
Well, yeah, some of the women down there are crazy. But anyway, that's all you need on your sign. That's it.
That's it.
And you could put one up at if Dale would let you could put one up at the Maze Mall. You could put one up at our building. We own a duplex at 140 William Street. You could put one up there, and if you don't have at least another dozen friends of the family and yourself in the area where you could just plug, and you say, look, I'm going to put it there for a few weeks if that's okay with you, and then I'll come and take it and put it somewhere else.
Absolutely, yeah.
And people will steal your signs, but generally speaking, because it costs $15, who cares? Some teenage boy will steal. Oh yeah, I know those guys. Steal it, put it in his basement. He'll smoke weed, and his friends will all see it there. But by the time they're 10 years older, they'll be saying, "Hey, I need some property management," right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So when it comes to lawn signs, when people steal it, I put out 20 lawn signs, and within a few weeks, probably 5 or 6 of them have been nicked. I don't care.
Yep.
I've been doing this for decades, right? And you see, like if you're a roofer, you every time you do a job, right, you put a sign there. Look, it says "Look up." Another job by Joe Smith.
You see them all over the place. I mean, like, marketing is, especially in this day and age, because there's so much competition, is extremely important. I know, like, I have my buddy who used to work for us. His family owns a roofing company. Yeah. And they are losing a fair bit of work just because the influx in roofers this season and their inability to adjust their business model to modern times, right? Because it's always changing, and everybody else who started the roofing company understands that. So they're out marketing them.
All right, so you can see I'm sending you this sign, okay?
Yeah.
And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to write on a piece of paper. A very simple thing. I'll just hold it up. I'd like you to write on a piece of paper, if you can see what I wrote there.
N equals 3 August 31st, 2023.
Yeah, should just put that on a blank piece of paper and tape it up somewhere where you can see it every morning and every night. And your goal is to have 3 buildings under management by the end of August. Now, hopefully you'll get 10, but not less than 3. And I'll tell you why I use the number 3. 3 is a magic number. If you have 3 customers, 3 clients, then that's a real business. If you have 1, it's not really a business. It's just because you can get someone to buy pretty much anything once, and maybe twice, but not 3 times. Do you understand? So the minimum number of customers or clients you need, I'm talking about property owners, is 3. And once you have 3, you probably get to 5. Once you get to 5, you get to 10, and then the next thing you know, you'll have you'll have 75 property owners doing business with you, and you'll have 400 doors.
I
Right?
like that. Three's an important number, right? It's one of the
It's a very, very important number. I see that number over and over and over again. I better stand up now. I can't sit down too long either. And you definitely want to have, so I mean, listen, you can change that. I mean, I'm just here as your friend and as your coach. But you know, if you're going to do this, then you want to have I just got to stop the wiggling here. You want to have 3 by the end of August, and then by December you'll probably have 10.
What's your take on education? I've been looking at this course through Humber College. I know they offer all the real estate licensing and whatnot. They offer courses for mixed use, residential, commercial property management. Then they also offer the courses, of course, for condominium management. Do you think that's a good idea?
So what I would do, this is completely self-serving, so you can take it for what it is. But what you should do is you should hire me as your coach. I won't charge you very much, but you should hire me as your coach. I'll teach you more about property management than you could learn at Humber College in 10 years.
Yeah, okay. And
it's up to you though. Listen, there's nothing wrong with Humber College. You can go there and get some education. But unfortunately, many of the people who are teaching property management at Humber have never been property managers.
Yeah, and I respect that. That's why I was asking you, because I know that it isn't a requirement to be to become a property manager to have any certification. I just wasn't certain if the education that you'd receive from Humber.
I get it. If you hire me as your coach, if you wanted to, I'll charge you the minimum. But I still work for a living, so I'll charge you something. But if you hire me as your coach after 6 months, because I'll do coaching once a month for 6 months, I'll give you a graduate certificate from the Firestone Institute. The Firestone Institute is just me. But that's worth something, because I built over 2,000 homes, dozens of office buildings and shopping plazas, an arena, and I coach now over 2,500 people. And I like doing it, that's why I do it. And it also provides some income too, I'll admit that. But I actually give you a graduate certificate, and that'd be worth something to an owner, to a property owner, who'll say, well, where did you get your, I learned under Bruce Van Firestone. He's a PhD in urban economics from the Australian National University, has a Master's of Engineering Science degree, Bachelor's of Civil Engineering. He's built over 2,000 homes, and he's been training me for the last 6 months. And probably worth something. If you want it, that's fine. If you prefer Humber College, then go for it. But I think you'll learn a lot more from me.
No, and I'd rather learn from someone who's walked the course, right? Not necessarily through property management, but you understand the business. If like when I went to school to become a paralegal, if none of my professors were practicing lawyers or paralegals, then I mean, what would I be learning? I would be learning from someone who's read a book and is just regurgitating material.
Yeah, and unfortunately, most of the books in real estate, whether it's property management or anything else, and in fact, even in entrepreneurship, are terrible. Are terrible.
But most books, I shouldn't say most books, but a lot of books nowadays are written specifically, I find, to generate revenue. Whereas, I mean, those authors who really want to teach, who know they have something to teach, they put a lot more effort into their pieces of work, into their novels. You can tell when you read something that was just generated like as quick as possible to generate revenue, as opposed to something where they actually want to pass over the knowledge that they possess, and that you put more work into it that way, more effort.
That's right. I'm just going to show you a couple other things here. I'm just saving your picture.
Okay.
All right.
How do I look? Good.
All right. So let me share a few more things with you.
Yep.
This is just an introductory session, and like I said, after we complete this, you know, we got another 17 minutes. After we complete this, I'll put it on YouTube, unlisted, and you'll have it, and I'll have it, and then you can use it, like I said, for staff training or for any other purpose that you wish. Okay, it's yours. All right. So now let's talk about property management revenue streams. This is very, very poorly understood in the industry. So, you ready?
Yes.
All right. So what you want is 6 to 8% of all long-term residential rents collected monthly. So if you had 100 units and they were all rented for $2,000, you would be collecting $200,000 a year a month, and at 8%, well, let's say 7%, you would end up with $14,000 a month in revenue. Okay. And that is your property management fee on long-term rentals.
Okay.
However, on every lease that you do, you're going to ask your property owner for a half month rent per year of lease term. Okay. And many property managers do this for free. Well, it's not free. And here's why. If you were the property manager and your property owner contacted me as a realtor, because I'm also a realtor, as you know, to do this, I would charge him or her half month's rent per year of lease term. So why the hell shouldn't you, if you're doing the same work, get paid? And I believe it is legal for property managers to lease space for third parties as property managers. But
I think it's not another property manager discussing that and how he sets up the interviews for leases and whatnot. And he does the leasing and all that. So I was trying to find through my own research if property managers can actually lease.
Well, for many years, at Terrace Investments Limited, the first parent company of the Senators, we did manage our own properties, but we managed some third-party properties as well. And we did the leasing without having our real estate license. But at some point, if you like what you're doing and you're committed to Ontario, then you would go and get your real estate license. You definitely would do that.
Yeah, you think that's
So
a good...
I coach some big companies like Colonnade Bridgeport and some others, and they have, over the last number of years, they have sent all of their property managers, or many of them, back to school to get their real estate license.
Okay.
All right. And then if in fact you did that, you would establish your own brokerage. You'd have Riverside Realty, and you would just run your commissions through there. But to start with, I wouldn't worry about it. This is just me talking. I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give you legal advice, but I wouldn't worry about it, because people in property management have been doing leasing for 100 years.
Yeah, for sure.
And so initially I wouldn't do anything other than, but I would charge for that, and I would charge a half a month per year lease term. So if I did a lease if I was working for Riverside, if I was Jordan, and I did a 2-year lease at $2,000 a month for an apartment, I would get a half month, $1,000 for the first year and $1,000 for the second year. So I'd get $2,000 plus HST upfront.
Okay. Just for signing that lease.
For signing that lease.
Okay.
And if you think about it, you're getting, say, at 7%, you're getting $140 a month to manage it, but you got $2,000 in your jeans plus HST, right? And on your fees, your 6, 7, 8% fee, you also have to charge HST.
Of course.
HST for a business owner is your best friend. Do you know why?
No.
Okay, I'm going to tell you. So let's say you had 100 apartments that you were managing, and you've got 7%. So you're getting $14,000 a month, right? Plus HST, because you got to charge HST on fees. So you have to register your company, right? Or you're doing business as. So Riverside has to be registered for HST. Okay. And so you charge HST and you remit it. But here's the good news about HST is that, let's say you hire an accountant or a bookkeeper, and your bookkeeper, I'm just making up a number, charges you $500 a month for bookkeeping and accounting services. All right, you know, you're $14,000 a month plus HST. So $14,000, you are collecting $1,820 of HST, right? But on the $500 you're paying your bookkeeper or your accountant, you are paying $65. You with me on that? Of HST. That money that you're paying becomes what's called an ITC, an input tax credit, which you can deduct from the HST that you received.
Yeah.
HST is a profit center. Many people, now, if you're just a consumer and you go buy a beer and you pay $4 for that beer and there's, I don't know, 60 cents of HST, well, you don't get that back. But if you take out a potential client for a nice meal and you pay $100 for the meal and say around $13 for HST, that $13 is an ITC because it's related to the business.
Yeah.
So guess what? You can now go and have as many beers and lunches as you want, and collect all your HST receipts that you paid, and you can get that money back. Clear as mud?
There is
All
water.
right. It is a wonderful, for a consumer, it's a cost. For a business owner, it's a profit center. Most people don't know that.
Anything that you can, I guess, claim against the taxes you pay is.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you take your girlfriend out for a date, you can't claim that as an ITC. But if you take me out for lunch and you say, Bruce, I'd like to manage one or more of your properties, any cost that you have, and if you're paying for internet, you pay HST, that's an ITC, and you get that money back.
Phone bills,
everything. Yeah, I mean, I got boxes full of bills.
Yeah.
All right. Something else that most property managers forget to do is you pay, let's say you pay, well, I should go back a step. Some property managers collect all the money in their account and remit that to whatever's left over to the client. Don't do that.
Trust accounts?
I'll tell you why. It happened to me once. I had a much bigger portfolio back in the day. I don't know, we probably had 300 apartments or something like that. And, back then, probably average rents were about $1,000. So we had a property manager collecting $300,000 a month in rent. And for some reason, the guy went a bit crazy and he didn't remit the monies to us for 2 months. And by the time we caught up with him, he was long gone to Alberta. We were out $600,000.
That's crazy. That is a horrendous situation.
So it does happen. I mean, and we never got the money back. That's gone money. When you're running a $120 million company, you don't go out of business because of that. Today, that would be a huge hit. But back then, when it was a bigger business, it didn't matter. It mattered, but it wasn't a killer. But since then, I've never allowed a property manager to collect all the rents and remit them to me. What I do is I collect the rents and I pay the property manager.
Okay.
And you're taking a risk that your $14,000, you might not get it for some reason if a property owner is mad at you, but you won't get many clients. And I don't think you want the responsibility of collecting, say, on 100 units, collecting $200,000 a month. Yeah. In case you're a bookkeeper, your accountant, one of your staff decides to purloin the money and disappear with it. It can happen. It does happen. Guess what?
That just happened with an estate in Toronto. I was being told about not too long ago about a guy's father passed away.
Yeah.
The lawyer was handling the estate, and the individual, the son who was expecting the money, didn't hear from the lawyer who was handling the estate and the settlement, and then started calling him. Turns out he's out of business because he had some involvement in criminal activity and then fled Ontario or Canada or whatever, gone with his money.
So exactly. So right away you will establish a level of trust between you and the clients. You say, look, the rents are going to go to you, and I'm going to trust you to pay me. I'm not collecting the rent. I'll make sure you get the rents, but they'll go to your bank account. And so if there's any money missing, it's not because I took it or you're responsible for that, but then you have to pay me. So you'll right away establish a level of trust that many property managers don't. Okay. Yeah. then on the fourth point on this thing is you ask for 15% of every bill that you pay. So if you're paying the gas bill, the internet bill, or anything for your clients, charge them 15% on that. So if you're paying, say, $100 a month in the internet, and you're paying bills, because you have to have a bookkeeper who's actually doing that, and you have to, get the money back from the client. There's an admin cost for that. There's a real cost for that. So we charge 15%.
Okay.
So, and that's true if let's say you need to call a plumber, and the plumber comes in and gives you a $300 bill, which you're going to pay. Your client is going to agree to pay you $345.
Yep.
All right. If anybody wants to do short-term rentals on Airbnb or vacation rental by owner, you cannot collect 6, 7, or 8% of those revenues. The Airbnb and VRBO, that's a hell of a lot of work. You're going to collect up to 25% of those revenues.
Okay.
All right. It's worth doing, but it's not worth doing for 8%. That's for sure.
Absolutely not.
And then if you do some medium-term rentals, 1 month to 6 month leases, as opposed, again, it's more work. You're going to charge 12 or 15% for that.
Okay.
All right. And rather than offer, if you're having trouble renting either a commercial space or a residential apartment or house, don't offer rent discounts. Offer premiums. And I'll tell you what. If you say to somebody, look, I'll give you a month's free rent on a $2,000 apartment, guess what? That's $2,000.
Yep.
If you say, look, I'll give you a free Costco membership for a year, that's like $80 or $100. And people value a premium more than they do the 1 month free, even though it's like 20 times more expensive to offer the month
psychologically.
It's psychological, right? So you think about some neat little premiums like that. If you provide tech packages for your tenants, in other words, you're already providing internet and Netflix and Prime, etc. Again, if you're billing clients, say $100 for their tech package, you are going to mark that up by 15%. Here's a couple of other things that again, most landlords, most property managers don't know. You should be coaching your property owners. And what do I mean by that is, like, I'll give you an example. I'm going to stop sharing just for a minute.
Yep.
And just to rest my eyes. So what you want to do is you want to coach them. So Dan Dory, for example, went back to school, got his real estate license. So every year or every 2 years, he will go to his property owners and say, we've studied your properties for the last year, and we think you should add some sheds, simple sheds in the backyards of the 20 properties that you own. Why would I do that? Well, because you could rent them. Everybody has too much stuff. So what Dan does is he goes and gets those Amish sheds that are like 10 by 12. They divide them into two, so they have doors on either end. So you've got 2 6 by 10s, right? Storage divided down the middle. And he charges $85 a side. So $85 a side times 12 times 2 is like another $2,000 in revenues on something that costs $3,500. Yeah. That's pretty good return, right? Yeah. So I teach something called animation, right?
What is it called? Sorry?
Animation.
Animation.
Not like Disney. It's not Disney animation.
Oh.
Animation is just a word I use to describe adding new revenue streams to properties. Okay. All right. So let me give you some examples. Riverside Property Management has noticed that Bruce owns 15 homes in the Belleville area, and they could all have, a shed in the backyard. So you go to Bruce and say, look, it's going to cost you 12 times $3,500 plus the 15%, right? Because you're going to supervise it, but you're going to add 15% for your supervision, or 20% if you want. And then as tenants move in and out, you rent that as an additional extra, and they're making, serious money on it. And so Bruce, your a property owner client says, gee, that Jordan Turney is a great guy. He's always thinking he's got my interests at heart. That's an animation. Another one is, you also notice that Bruce has these, 10 or 15 homes in the Belleville area for rent. And they all have basements that could have apartments in them. And you say, Bruce, when the tenant at 123 Any Street in Belleville moves out, that basement is great. It has its own means of ingress and egress from the outside. We could legally put a 2-bedroom apartment in there, maybe even a 3-bedroom apartment down there. And so now instead of having one income on the property, you could have two.
So
And
it's all about value adding.
yes, value added. That's a better way of putting it, maybe. And instead of having, so you would do the basement renovations, and maybe it costs $100,000 to put a nice apartment down there. And again, you charge 15%. That's another $15,000 or 20%, $20,000 for you. But I mean, you're managing it for them, and you put the Amish shed in the back. Don't buy those metal sheds from Lowe's. They're terrible.
No, the Amish know how to build.
Well, the Amish know how to build. Like, I have some Amish sheds that I've owned for 40 years, and they've got the metal roof and the wood frame. They're perfect.
Yep.
I bought one shed from Lowe's, a metal. It didn't make it through the first winter, right?
Rusts, falls apart.
Oh, it just fell apart. It literally didn't last a year. So I said, because my wife said, "Oh, we can buy these Lowe's sheds for $900. Why are you spending $3,500 on an Amish shed?"
Quality.
Yeah, because they last over 40 years. And I know that's a fact because I got some that are 40 years. Right. So, I mean, you don't want to put a shitty shed in the back of your client's property, and then first big snow, it literally does this. And everything inside gets ruined and you get sued. It's a bad idea. All right. So we've spent an hour sort of trying to give you some ideas. And so what Dan is now doing is he goes to these clients and he sells them on animation ideas, and of course he makes more money too, not just because he's charging 15 or 20 points on the renovation or the improvement, but also, he gets his 6, 7, 8%, right? From if you have 2 incomes instead of maybe even 3 incomes from the property, that's a hell of a lot more money for Dan, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So you kind of get the sense of where I'm going with this. I can teach you. There's a lot more to property management than most people know. I'll teach you, if you want, how to do proper residential leasing, how to do proper commercial leasing. All right. And if you want, if you can budget $500 plus HST, so $500 plus HST, if you want,
yep,
we'll do one training a month for 6 months.
Okay. Yep.
But this was great. You're not under any obligation whatsoever, but I think you should do it. You'll be one of the best trained property managers in the world at the end of that 6 months, in my opinion.
Well, and no matter what, I'm looking, I know that it makes sense to hire somebody who knows the business, right? And that's why I was looking at either going to Humber. I mean, and having this discussion with you and knowing that you're capable of teaching me everything that I need to know and more to get the business moving and off the ground. I mean, it's a no-brainer because we already have a relationship built. We already have rapport built. And I know how serious you are about your business. So
I am, and I like what I do most of the time. And I love teaching. And the other thing that will help you is that because I've done so much coaching over the last decade, I'll plug you into a huge network of people your age. Well, they're not, they range from, like, my youngest clients are in their 20s, and my oldest is actually now 90. But many of them are in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, so they're young and they're full of beans, and they have taught me a lot too. So what will happen over the next 6 months, if you want some training from me, is I'll teach you a lot, but you will also, because you're smart and you'll think things through, you'll come up with, you'll take whatever I teach you and you'll move it a little bit further. You'll move it out. That has been one of the great joys of my life over the last decade.
Just seeing growth. Because
I see young people who look, I've got some people who've gone from 0 to 300 million in the last decade. And I've got one client, I think, a couple clients who I think will have $500 million companies in the next few years. And, and these are people in their 30s now. How old are you now?
32.
32, yeah, is perfect age. So one of the things that Dan will do is it goes a little bit further, and this will be the last one because I got to go. Because he's got his real estate license, he'll go to his property owners and say, here's some animation ideas or value add. But he'll also say, you know, you've got a property over here that really is kind of peaking in terms of its value, cash flow. It's probably not going to go up a lot more on either of those scales. You might want to sell that and redeploy the capital into something that's better. So what Dan will do is he'll look at those portfolios every year or two of his clients, and he'll say there's some pruning that we should do, right? This thing is not really performing as well as you hoped or I hoped. Let's sell it. And so as a realtor, guess what? He can sell it and make a commission. And then guess what? Take that capital and he can help buy it. So his brokerage is doing very well. So at some point, if you're serious about this, and it'd be at least 2 years from now, and you've got serious clients and you're serious about the business and it's having success and it's profitable, you probably, either you or somebody who works for you, will go back to school and get her or his real estate license.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Because that buying and selling thing, and Dan has some property owners who come to him and they don't just buy 1 or 2 properties. He's got some who'll say, listen, I've got he's got a couple of rich dentists who buy like 6 or 8 townhouses a year.
Yep.
Right. And townhouse in friggin' Ottawa is now $700,000, and the commission on that is generally 2.5%. And so
what's your take on this multifamily conference in Toronto next weekend?
Well, most of them are bullshit.
Yeah, the conferences themselves or the speakers?
Both, not all, but many of them are. The real estate business, unfortunately, as a general rule, has very poor quality teaching, coaching, mentoring, textbooks, colleges, universities. It's really, really shabby. I've coached some people who've done Rich Dad, Poor Dad courses, cost them $35,000 that were completely useless.
Yep.
And they come to me and they say, well, you're only charging me, like, I'm going to charge you $500, but I would charge anybody else between $1,500 and $2,000 a month for coaching, right? And they go, that's nothing. I said, well, that's what I charge. And they go, well, that's cheap. Maybe your teaching is no good. I said, well, you'll have to make up your mind on that. But out of the 2,500 people I put through my coaching practice, I've only had about 8 or 9 fail.
Okay.
So I have a pretty good track record, not perfect, but close to it. And, for example, one guy I know, he's now passed away, was teaching people how to flip houses.
Yep.
And I asked him how many people fail to succeed in the business. And I was expecting to hear a number, but not this number. He said 94% of the people he teaches to flip houses fail.
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. I said, did I hear that right? 94% fail? He said, yeah. And what do you charge for that? He charged $61,000 for his program. I can tell you, with a 94% failure rate, I would have got out of that business in no time.
I would not be spending $60,000 on coaching.
$61,000 was the cost of the program, and he had a 94% failure rate. So I don't teach people to flip houses because that is a terrible business to be in.
Yeah, and I think you spoke with that before. Just
yeah, it's terrible. So I hope this was helpful, Jordan. Reach out to me if you want to go ahead with a 6-month program with me, and let me know.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Give my regards to your dad.
I will, for sure. Take care.
You too.